you can see him. He and I are co-chairing the summit this year, and you know, not surprisingly, it's not face-to-face, unfortunately. We can't be at Silver Bay. Joel is going to be our Silver Bay person since he's there right now, where we usually meet. But this is a free online community summit. And Carly and her great marketing team came up with this beautiful graphic for us here. Excellent work. And our theme is about incubating leadership. We want to help people grow in their own leadership, personal leadership, take some action on some projects that you might find really, you know, interesting and exciting, exhilarating. You know, what's your passion? And we're going to have 3 streams in the summit. So we're going to have the corporate stream, the educational stream, and the societal stream. So but we want to make a difference in this world and be a positive force here, and you know, make a strong positive impact. So we welcome everyone. Everyone is invited, included. Everyone's invited to these incubating leadership conversations. So we welcome everyone. Really happy to have you here, and you can see how to register right here.
Kathy, do we have to sign up for those streams ahead of July 8th?
Yes, we'll be doing that. Anne, do you want to say anything about that?
I'll be sending out an email at the end of this week for people to select which sector they want to be in. And then we're going to be reissuing the meeting invites, so people are invited to a specific sector during that time. And we'll also include the whole agenda. But, yep, you will get a request to do that, and please respond.
Maybe if you're not speaking, if you could just mute yourself. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I want to introduce our speaker for today. And Todd and I have known each other for a long time. Todd, you joined the Leadership Forum community back in 2008, and I believe I joined in 2007. So we were kind of newbies together, and we forged a great relationship, as we have with all these people on the little squares we see here. So anyway, Todd is the CEO of an organization, co-founder of Big Blue Gumball. It's a New York City-based consulting firm. And Todd really specializes in leadership development and does a lot of public speaking and talks about how to do public speaking well, is a great executive coach. He's also teaches and is a 3-time award-winning adjunct professor. He won awards 3 times for his teaching in leadership in the Human Capital Management Master's Program at NYU, and also lectures on leadership at Columbia University. So 2 very impressive universities. Good job, Todd. He's also a TEDx speaker. I watched this and it was great, The Power of Visual Thinking. And he's author of a brand new book. I believe this is the cover of the book that you're seeing right now, called Leveraging the Power of Visual Thinking in Leadership and in Life. And Todd is an avid sports fan, baseball fan as well. Yankees, even though, you know, I'm a Phillies fan, we still can get along. And Todd's an all-around great guy. So Todd, over to you.
Great, thank you, Kathy. I'll miss seeing you and Dale out on the softball field this year, but you know, we'll have to, like we were just talking about, play a doubleheader next season. So welcome to the workshop, Visual Leadership. It's about incubating leadership through the power of visual thinking. Everything I do revolves around visual thinking. We're going to pack a lot into this hour. It's going to be interactive and experiential. So I look forward to jumping on the chat box and participating in the conversation. When I talk about visual leadership, I actually have the registered trademark on the word visual leadership, as you see up on the screen. And one of the reasons I created this word is that vision and leadership are inseparable to each other, right? We talk about visionary leaders. We talk about having a leadership vision, right? So when you combine the two, the way we lead has a lot to do with the lens through which we see the world. So we're going to talk a lot about the theme and the metaphor of visual thinking today. And we'll talk about what that is. So again, as Kathy mentioned, my first book just came out 3 weeks ago. And it's about leveraging the power of visual thinking in leadership and in life. So it's not just for work. It's not just for managers. It's really about how we can all incorporate visual thinking into everything that we do. So if you think about it, visual leadership, as I just said, is the application of visual thinking to the world of leadership. So it's where visual thinking and leadership meet, as represented by this Venn diagram. So what is visual thinking? What does it mean? What are we talking about when we talk about visual thinking? What I'd like you to do right now is just jump into the chat box, and how would you define it? What does visual thinking mean to you? So let's take a look at the chat box for the next 30, 60 seconds and see how you would define what visual thinking means to you. Images. Thank you, Bill, for kicking us off. Bill Hunnix. Metaphor from Jane. Thank you. Enables us to see possibilities from Charlie. Lyndon, using symbols to create meaning. Storytelling from Helena. Kathy, strategy. All right, now we're speeding up, so you can read for yourself. Thinking in pictures, metaphor and storytelling. Using images to communicate, having a mental picture. Translating in our brains. Storytelling, again, from Steve. Current versus ideal. Being creative, creative thinking. These are great. Imagining a better way. So again, the cool thing about this, there's no wrong answers, right? So whatever, unlike with certain things, visual thinking is whatever it means to you, but it has to do with thinking in pictures, right? So often in the business world, we think in words and we think in numbers. So today we want to focus on how can we think in pictures and communicate using pictures, imagery, and other visual thinking techniques to be more effective. And one of my mantras is, and this is the theme for this workshop, how do you get others to see what you're saying? How do you get an idea out of your head and into someone else's head? So if you think about it, we all have ideas, right? An idea pops into your head. We need to think about how are we going to get this idea out there into the world, right? How are we going to frame this idea? Again, using the metaphor of a picture frame. How are we going to frame this idea and think about who is our audience? Who is our listener? Who are we trying to reach through our idea? And how are we going to communicate that idea in a visual way so that this person will say, yes, I see what you're saying, right? So that's the foundation of everything we do in all areas of communication. So for those who don't know me, just a 2-minute intro bio. Here's a little view of Silver Bay. So as Kathy mentioned, I've been a member of the community since 2008. So you can just sit down, take a deep breath, take in the view for a second. You know, a big part of visual thinking is visualization. So imagine that we are in Morse Hall. Imagine that we are all in person. Imagine that we are smelling the grass and seeing the mountain and smelling the mountain air, right? So part of visualization is picturing ourselves in an environment. Wordsworth talked about emotion recollected in tranquility and having an image flash on your mind, in your mind, and having those emotions come back. So every time I see this picture, which is my screensaver on my laptop in July, it always makes me, and in June, reminds me of what it's like to actually be there at Silver Bay. So my company is called Big Blue Gumball. We specialize in leadership, public speaking, and executive coaching. Big Blue Gumball is a metaphor that represents the world. To us, the world is one big blue gumball, however you want to see it. And our mission is to help make the world a better place, one leader at a time. And to us, everyone is a leader, right? We all need to lead in one way or another, even if it's just leading our own lives. So we're not talking about leadership as a position or title. We're talking about leadership as an innate quality. And again, we all need to lead in order to succeed. As Kathy mentioned, I also teach at NY and Columbia. Did my first TED Talk on the power of visual thinking. When we send out the slides, if you click on this picture, it'll take you right to the TED Talk if you'd like to watch it. And my book just came out a few weeks ago. So with that, let's turn the page, a little animation there, and let's get started with the interactivity of the workshop. So first thing I'd like you to do is think about in what ways do you use visuals of any kind to think and or to communicate within your job or in your life. So let me give you one real life example. I talk about this in my TED Talk, and then we're going to have you go into breakout rooms and actually discuss it with some of your peers part of in the community. So I tell this story in my TED Talk. I read about it in my book. So when I was 30 years old, I got a job as a project coordinator, and then I was thrown into the role of project manager for a theme park company. Charlie, you'll appreciate this story. You were in the theme park business. I was working for a theme park company called Sequoia Creative, and we manufactured life-size animals, and we shipped them to a theme park, cultural theme park in Shenzhen, China. Now today, Shenzhen is one of the technology hubs of the world. At the time, it was an agricultural center with some factories, and that was it. People there had never seen a Caucasian before, so I was stared at wherever I went. Also, no one had seen anyone of my height before, of 6'4". So people were taking pictures of me with holding their babies. It was a very surreal out-of-body experience, especially since I had never been out of the United States before at that time. So it was very disorienting to be in Shenzhen, China. So we manufactured these life-size robotic animals. These are all robotic, everything you're looking at right here. We manufactured them in LA, shipped them in a shipping container to Shenzhen, China. They showed up, right? So here's the elephant. You can see the elephants in the shipping container. When it was time to do the installation, we realized that no one spoke English. All the workers were Chinese, no English was spoken. The translator didn't even speak English. So we were in a little bit of a problem here when it came to figure out how are we gonna get this installation done. I was there with two of my crew members. So what I realized is we needed tools. So they pulled up with the toolbox, right? So this was very low tech, as you can see. You know, the bicycle came rolling up with the knack box. But when we needed tools, and we couldn't ship all our tools over there, so we needed things. How are we going to communicate when we needed a hammer or a screwdriver or a nail? I had a brainstorm, right? The light bulb went off, and I said, if I can't communicate in words, because I don't know how to say tape measure in Chinese, you know, maybe we could communicate in pictures. So I started drawing, right? So I picked up a pen, I picked up paper, and I would draw and point. That's how we got ideas across. And you know what? The installation was successful. And in order to communicate visually, you need to first think visually. How am I going to communicate this idea? And again, it became through pictures and pointing, or what I call Pictionary and charades. We have ended up getting this installation done. So that's one example from my life, from my career, where I drew on the, no pun intended, I drew on the power of visual thinking to get something done. Now we want to hear your stories. So think about it, and Matt is now going to put everyone in breakout groups of 3 for about 8 minutes. So take us just 60 seconds to introduce yourself to your people in your breakout room, but then spend the rest of the time talking about where have you seen it, how have you used visual thinking to communicate, or to get something done in your work or in your life. So with that, Matt, whenever you're ready.
And I just reposted the question in the chat for everyone to review, and I will be breaking you all up now.
To introduce each other, drew pictures of what they do on their name tags.
That's great. Love it. What else? What are some other examples you've heard?
Oh, I heard a wonderful example that Eileen gave of how when she was in Japan, she saw that people introduced themselves with a slide and pictures of themselves and very few words. And so I am going to steal that for my presentations from now on.
Great, great. We always, steal, beg, but borrow these techniques and use them in our own lives. That's great. Thanks, Helena. What else? Let's get 1 or 2 more.
We talked about how pictures seem to stick with you more than facts or the written word.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a minute, Anne, about why that is. What else? Let's get 1 or 2 more.
Helena showed us how you can simplify a very complicated visual, like a process flow chart, with colors. Colors just seem so important.
Yeah.
As far as the visuals go, colors and simplification.
Yeah, color coding. Think about traffic lights, right? Think about, what if you saw a stop sign that was green? You'd be like, do I go? Do I stop? Right? So it's something called a concept called cognitive dissonance, when there's a disconnect between what we see and what we're reading, or visuals and text. So that's a great, the color coding is really powerful. And it's cultural too. Colors may mean something different in another place, and then you show up there and it's like, well, that's not what I'm used to. So let's get 1 more, and then we're going to take a deep dive, and then we'll do another breakout shortly. So 1 more thought from your breakout session.
Joel had a good one. Joel had a really good one of, Joel, can you show it? The me versus we symbol that they created for, see the W and the M, for me versus we, for sports teams at was it University of North Carolina?
Yeah, so University of North Carolina uses the Argyle just across a lot of their campus, and in particular, the athletics teams were, have it on their uniform. And as we were creating a visual metaphor for their leadership academy for the student athletes, we scanned different things, but we really wanted to have the depth and meaning associated with leadership literature, research, and academic, or leadership literature and research. And so the me and the we became really important. So me was around define, understand, and own your role. And the we was around make your role matter. And of course, they're interdependent, the me and the we. So that's the type of depth that we were going for, because, a lot of times we just create a visual image of something, a framework, and it just goes on the wall, but it lacks the meaning and depth.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yeah, think about the power of logos, right? We see the Apple logo, we see the Nike logo, right? In a symbol without any words or text, it has meaning. Some logos represent something positive to us, something sometimes negative, but logos, symbols, one of the things I talk about in the book just a little bit is, if you think about it, caveman drawings existed long, 40,000 years ago, long before the written word was invented, right? The first written languages, Egyptian hieroglyphics, for example, those are all symbols, right? Those are visual images that were eventually evolved into the alphabet. And today we're using emojis, emoticons all the time, right? That's basically the modern day digital equivalent of caveman drawings, right? The smile face, the heart, right? If you think about the heart, right? Our heart literally does not look like, a Valentine, right? But that's a symbol that represents love, because love comes from the heart, right? So what's interesting is a lot of times we don't even think about these things that are right in front of us, hiding in plain sight every day. So I'm going to jump right now and we'll talk about just a few key concepts related to visual thinking, and then we'll do another breakout in just about a short while. So let's just jump back in. I just lost my, hold on one second. Okay, so I want to pose this question. Why visuals? What is it about visuals that can help us to be more effective thinkers, communicators, managers, and leaders? So a few things. First of all, I just want to talk about A, C, and R. Any guesses what they stand for?
Hey, Todd, just letting you know if you want to share your screen again so we can see.
Did I lose it? Yeah. Okay. Hold on one second. All right. Yeah, sometimes when we transition, let me, here we go. Oop.
Yep, we can see it. Thank you.
Can you see it full screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I lost it as I shipped the gallery out of the way. So ACR, let me just tell you what that is. So why visuals? Attention, comprehension, and retention. When we use visuals, either images or language, visuals help to capture people's attention and get people to focus. Like right now, everyone's looking at this slide. Hopefully you're not looking at your phone or checking your email. We're all focused because of the power of the image. Comprehension, when we use visuals, it increases our understanding, right? It helps us to comprehend basically what we're looking at, what people are talking about. And retention, as Anne mentioned earlier, visuals help us to remember, right? They get locked in our brain. So let's talk about, here's a real life example. This is Jeff Schwartzman's on the call. Hey, Jeff, how are you? This is the syllabus. This is the reading list from our syllabus from our NYU class, right? This is the same information, right? So right now, where is your eye being drawn? Which one is more interesting? Which one will compel you to say, hey, I want to buy that book, the text or the one with the cover, right? So if you think about attention, comprehension, and retention, the power of the visual becomes obvious. So in our brains, basically when our left brain and our right brain are fighting it out, the right brain always wins. This is just brain science. And you can spend all day just watching this duel and see if the outcome ever changes. It doesn't. So there's two key scientific principles in effect here. One, and I'm going to stop the visual because it's probably very distracting to everyone, right? So I'm going to shut it off. Two principles. The picture superiority effect says that when you have text and images, the images overrule the text. And I was just talking to in my group with Amanda and Becky. I was in the breakout session. Amanda was saying she likes to read books and novels. And one of the things I said is when you see the movie version of the novel, it almost erases how you pictured things while you were reading the book, right? If you read The Godfather and then you watch The Godfather, Marlon Brando is forever The Godfather, right? It's like you can't get that image out of your head. Again, that's the power of the picture superiority effect in action. And dual coding theory, and it's dual D-U-A-L as opposed to D-U-E-L, which is a different kind of dual that we were just talking about. Dual coding theory has to do with when you embed information in both parts of the brain, metaphorically, left brain and right brain, it increases understanding and comprehension and recall. So what we want to do is when we combine text and pictures, that's the most powerful way to get information to stick. So that's why a picture is worth 1,000 words, as we all know. That is why, as Sun Tzu, the Confucian philosopher, said, seeing something once is better than hearing it 100 times. And even Napoleon said that a good sketch is better than a long speech, although he probably said it in French. I'm not even sure if he spoke any English. But again, throughout culture, across cultures, the power of the picture is undeniable. So I want to introduce you to 4 types of visual thinking very quickly before I put you in the next breakout room. So think about different, so we're not talking about visual thinking in just one way. There's a whole variety of ways to think and communicate visually. So I want to talk about visual imagery and pictures, which includes drawing, PowerPoint slides, any kind of imagery. Number 2 is use of mental models and frameworks. Number 3 is metaphors and analogies. And number 4 is visual storytelling. I'm going to cover all of these in just a few minutes, just through visual examples, right? So visual imagery and pictures, right? IKEA, when you get that piece of furniture, you do not get a 30-page manual. You get an image saying, these are the pieces and this is how they go together, right? That's a great example. I haven't been on the New York subway in 3 months, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But if you were to ride the subway map tells you through color coding of the various subway lines, which line do I take? If I need to get from the Upper East Side where I live to LiquidNet to have a meeting with Jeff in Midtown on the West Side, I could visualize the Q train running along the yellow line and how I get from the Upper East Side to Times Square. Again, I have that visual image in my mind. When I'm presenting, you can see I have my, my remote control here with me. Instead of having a text checklist of what I need to bring with me to present, this is my visual checklist. I can look at it and say, do I have everything I need? Do I have my water bottle, the projector, extra batteries, right? I did a workshop with my brother a couple of years ago. We had someone do a graphic recording which captured the essence of what we were talking about. So here right now, just in 4 visual images, some examples of how we use imagery to communicate, to think, and to get ideas out of our heads and into someone else's. Mental models. I gave you my Venn diagram earlier. The upper right, you may recognize Maslow's hierarchy of needs, situational leadership, data visualization. So we use visuals in all areas of our life. Process diagrams, organizational charts for companies. Those are all mental models or frameworks to help us visualize the complexity of reality. In a few of our previous workshops, let's give you a few examples. So here, Joel and Chris, right? They provide us with their slope model, right? Great visual framework that helped us think about a new way of thinking about leadership development, right? Rachel, I think, is on the call. Welcome, Rachel. You gave us a number of great models and frameworks and paradigms through which we can visualize leadership with the different icons, right? The different representations, the warrior, the king and queen, etc. And Robert Schott last week gave us a couple of frameworks how we could flip the viewpoint and create the my me in the workplace. So just these are all things that we do without sometimes really thinking about it, but these are just 3 different examples just from our past 3 Leadership Forum community workshops where people really effectively use the power of visuals and mental models to help communicate their ideas. Metaphors and analogies. Why do we use metaphors and analogies? What's the power? They make the abstract concrete, the intangible tangible, the complex simple, the unfamiliar familiar, and the invisible visible. I tend to use a lot of baseball analogies because I'm a baseball fan, but if I'm teaching and my students are 25-year-old females from China in my HR master's program, a baseball analogy may not resonate with them, right? A metaphor from dance or theater or something more universal. So a metaphor can be a shortcut to create understanding, but the wrong metaphor can actually alienate people and do the opposite and create misunderstanding instead of understanding, right? So one of my college textbooks was called Bridges, Not Walls. So just think about the title. Bridges, through communication, bridges connect us while walls divide us, right? So just from this one image, this one book cover, we have a visual metaphor. You could take stones and bricks and build a bridge, or you can take stones and bricks and build a wall, right? So just thinking about that metaphor is so powerful, right? And this was a book cover from 30 years ago. And visual storytelling, what do we mean by visual storytelling? Basically painting a picture with words. I was doing a workshop for CEOs on visual storytelling, and the CEO said, oh, I hate storytelling. I'm really terrible at storytelling. And I said, why do you say that? And he went on to tell this amazing story about why he was so bad at storytelling, right? So we are all natural storytellers. Children tell stories, grandparents tell stories. If someone says, how was your day? And you said, you wouldn't believe what happened to me today, you're telling a story, right? So get that I'm not a good storyteller out of your head and think about how you could paint a picture with words. So if someone asks me, oh, what's the leadership forum at Silver Bay? What's it like up there? Joel could tell us because he's up there right now, but you could paint a picture with words. You could say what it's like when you drive up there and you see this sign, how it feels when you transition from the real world to the magical world of Silver Bay, right? What's it like to sit on these chairs and to smell that grass? What's it like to be in this room and to hear the music and to reconnect with the Dick Pryors and the Howard Krauss, right? What is it like to gather in this new space that was just created and just opened up, and that feeling of community and connection, right? So through our stories and through visuals, we could recreate the emotion of being in a certain time in a certain place. And hopefully this will bring back some memories of what it's like to actually be there, seeing the sunset at Silver Point and sitting in this chair and talking to each other on the porch looking at the lake. So those are some examples. I went through a lot very fast, but hopefully it brought up through visualization some emotions, some thoughts, and different ways to think visually. So now let's talk about how we could apply this. One of the things I always say is that the true value of knowledge is not in its accumulation, but in its application. So how can we apply some of these techniques of visual thinking, visual communication, metaphor, storytelling, mental models and frameworks, and visual imagery and drawing into our lives? So once again, Matt, let's just check on the time. It is 12:36. We are right on schedule, which is amazing. So we're going to put you in the breakout room for about 8 minutes again. We're going to mix it up, hopefully with some new people. And you're going to have this conversation based on picking up on where you left off with the last conversation. I just gave you some insights into why the brain processes visuals in a certain way and how you could use different methods of visual thinking. Let's take the conversation to the next level. How are you going to apply this stuff going forward? So with that, Matt, let's turn it over to the breakout groups.
Oh, you are getting good, Todd. You are really getting good.
These 8 minutes went by so fast.
That's what happens when you're having good conversation.
Todd, on mute.
Yeah, Todd, are you there?
Oh, yeah, it's muted.
Yeah, it'd be good to be off mute. Yeah, as soon as I go into breakout, it throws everything back to zero. So I have to get, let me just check on the time, see how we're doing. We're right on schedule at 12:46. So let's talk about it. What you talk about, what you take away, and then we'll see what questions you have. Who wants to kick us off? What could we learn from the conversation you just had? Eileen, why don't you go first? Eileen Bertelson.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Oh, Eileen. Eileen. Yeah. Oh, two Eileens. Different spelling. Go ahead, Eileen.
One's with an E and one's with an I, and we're creating that visual right there. So see, we're learning from you already, Todd.
Great.
So I partnered with Carly, and what was interesting to discover in describing the kind of work that we do, and of course that connects to our lives, but our roles in the work that we do, to develop certain kinds of visual thinking or call upon that more. And we had the exact opposite in terms of where we felt like we were using it richly and where there were opportunities to deepen and broaden the way we drew upon our visual thinking. So we were kind of like relief of each other, to give you a visual, sort of like yin and yang with the visual. Yeah.
Great, great.
Yeah.
And I love that. One of the things about visuals, even we could communicate with visual language. It doesn't always have to be with pictures, right? You paint a picture with words. And one of the classic examples is Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, right? He didn't say, "I have a PowerPoint, I have an Excel spreadsheet." He said, "I have a dream, I have a vision of an idealized future state that is different from and better than the current reality." That's the classic example of using metaphor, analogy, alliteration, storytelling, voice modulation, right? So I watch it at least a few times a year. It's one thing to listen to it. Sometimes I'll just listen, sometimes I'll watch it. But if you want to be a great visual communicator without slides, that's probably the classic example to watch. Who else? Thank you, Eileen. Who has another thought?
Another Eileen.
Okay.
I was with Chuck and Chris, and Chuck gave made a great point that the new normal now of we could be improving some things. So where he dug up one of his old classes that he used to teach, and then he said, "Oh my God, it has so many words on it." So he had to reshift how he was putting his deck together and put more visuals in to make it less boring, less wordy. So I think some positives can come out of where we're heading and what we've learned in these last couple of months.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, in today's world, I mean, attention spans are shorter than ever. We're overloaded with information, and if a picture's worth 1,000 words, if you could communicate something with a picture, then why not, right? That's because no one has time to read 1,000 words, right? So again, that's a great example of that.
Yeah.
I think we also have to teach people to be extremely careful about the images they're using.
Yes.
Make sure that what they're trying to convey gets conveyed. But we also have to make sure that the images are not being misappropriated for different purposes.
Yeah, great point, David. Yeah, so we're not talking about using clip art from Microsoft circa 1995, right? We're talking about using, so it's not, and again, like with PowerPoint, it's not just going to Google and, taking images, right? If you could take your own pictures, as you saw most of the images I took, pictures I took at Silver Bay and other places, right? Create your own images or go to tons of resources, iStock Photo, Shutterstock. If you pay per image, it's expensive, but if you're doing a project or for my book, you subscribe for a month or two, whatever, and you get to, so you just have, like David's saying, we can't just pull images from all over the place, but again, the power of pictures when done right, and also the wrong image can backfire on you, right? So if you use an image that is not relevant, maybe offensive, we need to really think about the message, our image that we choose to use, what message that image is sending. So thank you.
Todd, I'm going to jump in on something and then tie to the leader question. Even when you were sharing the photos of the retreat center, it was so obvious to me who had been there as you presented because they were all smiling, like a very warm smile. I can only begin to guess who was there. And so you knew your audience, and you chose images to tie to the audience. One thing that came up in our breakout, and I'm still editing how this might work, but as a leader, somebody might be trying to convey something to you. They might be all over the place or not succinct, or you're not really catching what they're throwing. And a lot of time's going by. And you can invite them and say, look, I'm actually a visual learner. It'd be really helpful. I'm not grasping this, or I might need to grasp it differently. How would you, and we started to brainstorm how that could happen, but how would it look like, at the end result? What can you give me a visual what that looks like versus what it is now?
Right.
And it might be a learning for them too.
Yeah. So it's not just one of the things I talk about. It's not just using images, but it's asking other people to paint a picture, right? Hand them a marker, say, can you go up to the flip chart or whiteboard and can you sketch it out for me? Can paint me a picture, draw me a sketch, right? Also, one of the things I talk about, part of leadership, is not just being a good storyteller, but being a good story listener. Are you the type of person who can pull a story out of someone, right? The cover of my book has a big eye. The primary way we talk about visual leadership is how do you get your vision out there into the world? But if you flip the eye, how do I see things from other people's point of view, right? In today's world of diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, we need to be able to be empathetic, compassionate. The only way to do that is to just like To Kill a Mockingbird, walking a mile in someone else's shoes, flip that eye around. Sometimes I'll say you have two eyes. Use one eye for seeing your vision, use the other eye for seeing the other person's vision, and process them both. So again, there's a lot of different ways we can dice and slice it, but a big part of it is using empathetic listening and empathetic seeing to look at things from other people's points of view. So thank you for reminding me of that, Lynette. Let's take one or two other comments from your sessions, and then we're going to start.
I'd like to add something if I can.
Sure.
I was in the breakout room with Rich and Jane brought up a very good issue that I've been sitting here thinking about how to transfer that to the, emerging leaders and the incubating leaders role, particularly when we're trying to get young people to buy into the fact that, leadership has to be developed and grown. Jane brought up a very real statement about sometimes visuals, and in her case, her example was photographs. They can have contradictory and conflicting kind of messages.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of relates back to the book title you showed, where we can build a bridge or we can build a wall using the stone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it made me really reflect on two things that are hitting us really hard right now in our society, is the contrast of things, not just data, but pictures that we see on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to just thank Jane for bringing that out, because it helps me to realize now that maybe a good tool for leaders, maybe a good tool, you have to really use both eyes, like you said, Todd, is that we can show one visual and then show the opposite of that visual in whatever context we're in, and use that to stimulate healthy discussions and dialogue.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Rob Salafia who's part of our community. I don't know if he's on the call, but he does a great job, author of Leading from Your Best Self. He does a great exercise where he puts out, he has people pair up, and then you pick out images. I think they're CCL from their vision pack, and pick an image that represents the other person, right? So there's all kinds of, almost like a Rorschach test kind of way. Images can be used in so many different ways to communicate ideas. They can also be used to manipulate, right? Images are not, you're not saying that pictures don't lie. In today's day and age, they do lie. Pictures can be photoshopped, manipulated. So we need to think about context. We need to think about the integrity and authenticity. So again, it's not just like, here's a subjective image, objective image. So that's a good point. Just like words can be manipulated or misconstrued, so can pictures, right? So we need to think about that. We need to be, one of the phrases now is, are we visually literate, right? Just as we need to be literate in reading and writing and arithmetic, right? We need to be visually literate when it comes to pictures, just as well, right? So Rich Cooper, I think you had your hand up. Did you have a thought you wanted to share?
Yeah, it's along the lines of, this phenomenon now of deep fakes.
Yeah.
So using a visual image or a video to intentionally mislead or miscommunicate the facts around things. And it's just, it becomes a wild west of trying to find what truth is.
No, that's true. All right, so we have 5 minutes left. So a couple of things. We're going to start to bring things down so we can end on time, although we're happy to stay later so we can continue the conversation. Also, tomorrow at noon, we're having our weekly coffee. So we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow at noon for anyone who would like to join. So last couple of things. So Q&A, we're going to continue that either afterwards or tomorrow. So I just want to kind of bring things to a close for those who have to leave. So a few things. I'd like to ask, what was your biggest takeaway from today? What is one thing you will do to be a more visual leader going forward into the future? And the best way to do this is to just type it into the chat box. And I'm going to remind everyone at the end, and Matt's going to remind us to save the chat box. I always forget, and I always mean to, and I always forget to do it. Save the chat comments. So it's always great to reflect and read later. So right now, open up the chat box and type in your biggest takeaway from today. What resonated with you? Just take another 30 seconds or so keep them coming. A lot of great insights, a lot of ahas, a lot of lessons that we could learn from all these comments. Great, I love it. All right, so we're learning from each other. One of the things that Jeff Schwartzman and I always say in our classes, and I see Madeline Weinberg, one of our NYU students on the call, is that the success of any session, whether it's a class, a workshop, a webinar, is 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. 1/3 is the content, 1/3 is the facilitation of the content, and 1/3 is the contributions of the other people in the room. So if you're not getting contributions, if we're not learning as instructors, as facilitators, as teachers, if we're not learning from everyone else, then we're missing out. And we're missing out on a chance for everyone in a peer-to-peer learning kind of way to learn from each other. So this is great. So as much as hopefully you learn some things from me today, I'm learning some things from you as I hear what resonates, what doesn't, etc. So it's great to see these chat comments, and I look forward to printing them out and reading them in detail afterwards. So just to close out, because it's 12:58, last couple of things. So let me just close my chat box, and here we go. So last couple of things. One is there's a million resources out there on visual thinking. What my book is just the tip of the iceberg, metaphorically speaking. So these are some of the books that really influenced me in my thinking. I'm actually guest speaking, if you see Design the Life You Love, I'm guest speaking on Aisha Bersel's Design the Life You Love session today at 5 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to, I posted on LinkedIn and Facebook. So if you want to join at 5 o'clock today, a little more visual leadership, I'll be doing that. But these are some of the books, Presentation Zen, Resonate. These are some of the thought leaders that impacted my thinking. And if you go to, and I'll tell you this in a minute, these are all in my book, at the back of my book, but there's also a way to get this for free if you go to my brand new website, which just will be launching next week. So this is the first time anyone's hearing about it. So I still have bigbluegumball.com, but as an addendum, toddcherches.com will be launching next week. So if you want to be one of the first to see it, if you sign up for the list, you can download my 52 top book recommendations to help you be a better visual leader. Last couple of things. So hopefully today will help to make you a more effective visual leader going forward. And you feel free to reach out anytime with any questions, comments, etc. So thanks for having me. It was great talking and seeing everyone today. So thank you. And lastly, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Cool. Well, I'll jump in, Matt. Katleo here, everyone. Thank you so much. Hey, Todd. Thank you so much for that presentation. Always just inspiring hearing from you. Thank you just for reminding everyone about Coffee Chat tomorrow. And last but definitely not least, just a reminder for all of us to diarize the 8th and the 9th of July for our summit, which will be like, the culmination of all the conversations we've been having. But thank you everyone for joining us today. And I guess see everyone tomorrow at the Coffee Chat.
Thank you, Katleo. I'm saving the chat right now, and anyone else who wants to do that, now's a good time. And I'm staying on, and if not, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd.